Sam here again for Destiny by Design. And this week we are going to continue our study of purpose. And we spoke about it a little bit last week. We were talking about how correction and purpose are interconnected, and correction will move you along in your purpose. And today we're gonna study a different aspect of purpose, because many of us are trying to discover our purpose and we don't realize how God reveals purpose, or how God manifests purpose. And so without further ado, I'd like you to we're gonna come out of Genesis 37 in a bit, but I want to say some things to you first. And today we're going to talk specifically about purpose and preparation. A lot of times when we discover our purpose, or we're trying to, sometimes, let's say we've discovered our purpose, a lot of us just want to leap into it, and we think that God is just going to throw us right into it immediately, and we're going to see the full manifestation of this thing overnight, and that's not necessarily true. Now, there are some people who God saves them and they have this dramatic testimony, and He immediately calls them into ministry, but even then, you'll still see a process of maturation, you'll still see a process of development. And usually in those cases, there's been a bit of an acceleration in how God has dealt with them. You know, because some of us say, well, this person, you know, they got saved and they started preaching. Yeah, but they got saved, they got delivered for real. And what do I mean by that? I see a lot of people, you know, they want to jump into ministry already. And it's like, wait a minute, you're living in fornication, you're shacking up with somebody, but you want to be in ministry. That guy whose ministry launched not long after he got saved, well, he was a drug addict. He stopped being a drug addict. He was a drug dealer. He stopped being a drug dealer. He was a pimp. He stopped being a pimp. She was a prostitute. She stopped being a prostitute. You're a fornicator. You haven't stopped being a fornicator. Do you see the difference in the pattern yet? Now, I know that comes across as harsh, because these days we can't stand any criticism. That isn't harsh. Hell is a lot harsher than that. Missing your destiny is much more harsh. And I'm saying all that to say this, that every purpose requires preparation. There's no exceptions. If you have a true God-ordained purpose for your life and you're moving toward it, there's going to be preparation. And for most callings, it's not going to be, you know, God calls you as an apostle, and tomorrow you got a 12,000 member church and a ministry all over the world. It doesn't work that way. Now, some people rise up faster than others, but then people have different purposes. And it's just like a 150-meter hurdle race is over a lot quicker than a triathlon. They're two different sports, two different kinds of athletes. Both are impressive athletes, both require hard work, both require tremendous preparation and conditioning, but they're very different sports. One is over in seconds, the other takes longer, depending on how long of a triathlon it is. Hours at the very least. So one of the things you want to do in your preparation is stop comparing yourself to other people. Because the comparison may not be a fair one. They've got a different calling. They've got a different assignment. They're called to different people. And here's another reason why you can't compare yourselves to other people. Because how do you know they haven't missed it? You may see them with a flourishing ministry. They appear to be successful. They're doing a lot of things. They're all over the world. They're on the internet. You know, everybody, they're a household name. But how do you know for sure they're actually doing what God called them to do? It's a very dangerous thing to try to use someone else's experience as a benchmark for your own, at least in that sense. Because a lot of times some people have missed the mark. Some people they have proceeded quickly because they're out of the will of God, and the devil doesn't fight something that's out of the will of God. If God has called you to be a missionary in China, The devil's probably not going to fight you if you go to South America instead. He may not. Because you're not in your assignment. You may move in your gifts, but you're not in your specific assignment. So you have to understand, you got to stop comparing yourself to other people. They're walking, you're walking, two different things. But every purpose requires preparation. There's no way around. There's no two ways about it. There's going to be some kind of preparation. Even in the natural world, we understand this. Almost nobody becomes a CEO overnight. It requires preparation. Now, preparation, there's basically two major components to preparation. We can break it down in many other ways, but I like to keep things simple. Two of the greatest things that preparation is going to do for you are this. Preparation establishes character and equipping. Not just equipping, there has to be character. If you have character without equipping, you're not going to accomplish anything. And if you have equipping without character, you will always accomplish less than what was intended. At the very least. Best case scenario, you're going to accomplish less than what was intended. Worst case scenario, you're going to be doing something entirely out of the will of God because you didn't have character. The other thing preparation does is it establishes your legitimacy. I'll say that again. Preparation establishes legitimacy. God will take you through a process to legitimize you. God didn't take that little, teenage shepherd boy. He anointed him king, and David knew he was going to be king of Israel. But he didn't put him on the throne the next day. That's why David went back to taking care of sheep the next day. And apparently for at least for some time after. We don't know how long. At least I don't know offhand. Do you see what I'm getting at? You look at Moses. Moses was 80 years old when God caught his attention with the burning bush and took him back to Egypt to set the people free. 80 years old. Now, I'm not saying you're going to have to wait till you're 80. And in all fairness, Moses lived to be 120. So, 80 wasn't so bad. He's only 2/3 through his life. And we don't know what went on between God and Moses in the desert. That was just when God told him to go back to Egypt. And then we look at someone like Joseph. And we're going to take a closer look at Joseph in particular. Joseph's preparation took decades, same thing with Moses. You look at David, that also took, some people believe it's about 17 years between the time that David was anointed and when he finally became king. And there was a process there. An inescapable, unavoidable process. But I want to look at Joseph in particular tonight. If you turn your Bibles to Genesis chapter 37. And a lot of us are familiar with the story of Joseph, which is why I want to take this as our example about preparation, how God will prepare somebody. And we're going to focus on one particular aspect of that preparation. And we'll probably continue with this next week. Might even make a couple extra videos this week just to cover all what we want to cover. But we're going to start at the first verse so we get the context here. Father, I thank you for your word. I thank you for it falling on good ground. I thank you for setting a watch over my mouth, Lord. I will not say anything untoward, unkind, unscriptural, unprofitable, but rather that you would use me to speak as the oracle of God. To render a word that will help your people to become who you intended them to be. In Jesus' name. And Jacob dwelt in the land wherein his father was a stranger, in the land of Canaan. These are the generations of Jacob. Joseph, being 17 years old, was feeding the flock with his brethren. And the lad was with the sons of Bilhah, with the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives. And Joseph brought unto his father their evil report. Joseph was a kind of a snitch. At least that's the way we would look at it right now. Apparently they were up to no good, and he told on them. That's another issue. Now, some people would just say Joseph was a snitch, and because I'm somewhat I'm both amused sometimes and horrified at the way people conduct their interpretation of Scripture, because they look at it from the modern worldly standpoint. Oh, he was a snitch. And it never occurs to them to think that his brothers might have actually been doing something that was wrong. It was an evil report, and he went to tell his father, because whatever it was they were doing wasn't right. And if we remember from previous chapters, Jacob's sons weren't exactly angels. And but we see something in here of Joseph's process of preparation. He did have a sense of what was right and what was wrong, and that something had to be done about it. Now, some people just call him a snitch. Other people might say he had a sense of justice. Now, we're not even told what it was that they did. And maybe we'll never know. But one thing we know for sure is that whatever it was, Joseph wanted to set things right. Now, some people, and at least that's what we can see from Joseph's overall character throughout the narrative. We can possibly interpolate that. Now, some people will say, well, no, Joseph was being petty. No, and preachers that say that's because they're petty. They interpret Joseph as a brat or as a snitch, and that wasn't necessarily the case. Because a person who's merely a snitch and just trying to get people in trouble, you don't see them exhibit the exemplary character that Joseph exhibits not too long afterward. But I'm getting ahead of myself here. Now, after this it says, now Israel loved Joseph more than all his children, because he was the son of his old age, and he made him a coat of many colors. Now, something you got to understand about your process of preparation is very often, sometimes very early in your walk, God will do some things that make it very obvious that his hand is on your life, and people are not going to necessarily like it. Purpose is usually revealed or manifested in stages. God doesn't always tell you everything at once. Sometimes God will make you wait years. You look like Moses, 8 years old. You look at Joseph, his dream took decades, and we're going to get into his dream in a second. His dream took decades to manifest itself. And sometimes God will reveal purpose early, but that doesn't mean he's going to manifest it early. And we're going to see that here. And so he has the favor of his father, and his brothers clearly don't like it. And God may make things obvious about you. Sometimes that happens. I remember years ago there was an apostle who said to me, he was prophesying to me, and one of the things he said to me, he said that the apostolic mantle that's on your life is so obvious that it makes leaders uncomfortable. And that was why a lot of leaders didn't like me. I made them uncomfortable. I didn't have to say that. I just walked in the room and they didn't like me. Because they could feel the authority of God that God had set on me. I wasn't moving in that authority yet. God hadn't set me in the office yet. But the mantle was already there. The anointing was already there. And they could feel it. And it made them uneasy. And it says, and when his brethren saw that their father loved him more than all his brethren, they hated him and could not speak peaceably unto him. Guess what? Some people are not going to like you. What a shock. They don't got to like you. And one major component of preparation is you got to get delivered from people. You've got to lay aside approval addiction, as some people call it, and come to the conclusion that the only person whose opinion of you really matters is God's. Because not everybody's going to like you. Some people, now don't get me wrong, if somebody dislikes you for good reason, then you need to do some introspection and make some changes. But there's going to be times when you haven't done anything wrong, people are not going to like you anyway. There are going to be people who will outright hate you, and you haven't done them any wrong. I've known people who violently hated me, did things that put my life in danger because they hated me. I didn't do anything to them. In fact, one of them, the only thing I did to her was I looked like her abusive daddy. Because I looked like my grandfather. I sound like him, I walk like him, I talk like him. So I guess that triggered her all the time. I was like a constant reminder of whatever it was that he did. So my mama didn't like me. I didn't do anything to deserve it. Guess what's going to happen? And especially if God starts to show any aspect of the call on your life early on, somebody's not going to like it. Too bad for them. And it's something you also have to understand. Remember, it says in Romans that we know that God causes all things to work together for the good of those that love Him and are called according to His purpose. Original Greek for all still means all, folks. So even if they don't like you, even if they hate you, even if they try to derail you, if they try to kill you, God will make it work for your good. And as we're seeing this story, they did their worst to destroy Joseph, and all it did was set him on the path he needed to be on to achieve his destiny. So another thing you have to understand about preparation is along the way there's going to be pieces of your preparation you're not going to like. There's going to be parts that hurt. There's going to be parts that are unpleasant. And some of it God will allow to transform your character, but also to reveal your character. Pressure doesn't show what it doesn't make you, it shows what you're made of. Sometimes we have no idea what we got inside us, good or bad. I remember there was a movie, and a lot of motivational speakers now use a clip from this movie. I can't remember the name of it. But there's a scene where there's this high school football team. And they're doing this drill where they got to crawl on a field with one of their teammates on their back. And that's hard, and they can't let their knees touch the ground, so it has to be only their toes and balls of the feet and their hands. Now, if you've ever done anything like that, to do that with somebody on your back is hard, and you can't drop him. And they've been doing that, and one of the boys on the team that the others look at to as a leader is kind of despondent about their upcoming game because they're going to play against a team that's much better than they are. The players are much bigger than them, they're stronger than them, they're the state champions, and so he's talking about how they can't beat them, and the coach gets mad at him. Doesn't want to hear that negativity. He makes him get down. He's going to do the drill again, crawl across the field. Gets another one of the boys to get on his back, and he blindfolds him. And he tells him to start crawling. I just want you to do, I think it was 30 yards, it might have been more than that. But he can't see where he's going, because he's blindfolded. And after a while, this thing, your muscles start burning, it's hard, he's sweating, and he's like, I can't do this, and the coach is yelling, don't you quit on me, Brock, don't you quit on me, 5 more yards, 5 more yards, 10 more yards. And he keeps yelling at him like that, till finally, the boy collapses. Like his whole body is shaking from the effort, and he collapses, and his tears are running down his face because he's in pain. And he says, I told you I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. Because I think he was supposed to crawl 30 or 50 yards or something. It might have been 30. And then the coach takes his blindfold off and says, Brock, you're in the end zone. He thought he couldn't crawl halfway across the field. He did the whole thing. He said, you did that with a 140-pound man on your back. And the other boy says, Coach, I'm 160. A lot of times, God is going to put you through something that's going to be like that scene. Where you don't know, you may not know which way is up. You're flying blind in many ways. And God will do it to you on purpose. Because you've got to learn how to trust Him. And like that boy, you're going to learn what you're really capable of. Not in and of yourself. Because unlike that movie that boy was doing, was realizing his own potential. But in your case, it's about the potential of Christ in you. Of who God has intended you to be. And very often, a lot of your preparation is going to involve some things you're not going to like, some things that are going to be painful and unpleasant, some things that are going to seem to be a waste of your time, and God is developing your character. He's showing you what you can do, what you can't do, revealing your limitations. Now that having been said, Joseph's brothers couldn't even speak peaceably to him. They just couldn't stand him. And maybe somebody can't stand you. That's all right. Now the next verse says, and Joseph dreamed a dream, and he told his brethren, and they hated him yet the more. And he said to them, hear, I pray you, this dream which I have dreamed. For behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and lo, my sheaf arose, and stood upright. And behold, your sheaves stood round about, and made obeisance to my sheaf. And his brethren said to them, shall you indeed reign over us, or shall you indeed have dominion over us? And they hated him yet the more for his dreams and for his words. And apparently this wasn't the only dream he shared with them. And let me tell you something, brother. There are people you can't share your dreams with. In this case, this is part of the walk. Had to happen. But consider who you're sharing your dreams with. Not everybody that's going to hear your dream is going to like it. Not everybody wants to see you come out on top. There are some people that will even act like they're supporting what you're doing and completely against it. And sometimes it's not even entirely personal. Something you got to understand is it's not only them. In this case, his brothers were resenting him because of the idea of their little brother lording it over them. Sometimes it isn't even that. It's not entirely personal with people. Sometimes the real reason they resent your dream, they resent your vision, they resent your call, is because you are reminding them of just how uncommitted they are. Because let me tell you, and I've seen it in churches, one thing people cannot stand, when they used to fast and they used to pray and they all used to be nice and skinny because they fasted all the time, and now they're all obese because they might fast, they'll talk about fasting a meal. They'll skip one meal once in a while. They might do a 1 or 2 day fast, but they don't have a real fast life anymore. They don't have a real consecration. They don't really pray all that much. The last thing they want to see is somebody on fire for God who is fasting, praying. And it doesn't mean that you're saying it. They'll know. And even if they don't know outright, they're going to feel God's hand on their life. Because a person who has lost their anointing can recognize it on you. So sometimes it's not even a resentment of you superseding them or surpassing them, but just that you're reminding them how backslidden they are. Guess what? Too bad. So sad. Now we're discussing this. This doesn't mean you got to focus on it. Just acknowledge the fact that some people are going to resent you, some people are going to not like you, some people are going to outright hate you. But you got to move forward. It is part of your training. It is part of your preparation, because you have to be to fully engage in the destiny that God has set before you. You've got to be able to commit to the plan of God regardless of who's doing what. Because you may let's say God has called you to the office of a prophet. You may very well have to take a prophecy request from somebody who's been slandering you. And still pray for them and seek for, and some people say, well, you don't got to do that, but if the Holy Ghost moves you to speak, you better speak. And I've had that happen. I've had that happen where I've had to prophesy to people who don't like me. And I wasn't prophesying some kind of, punishment from God on them. There was something else that God gave me to say to them. And so I said what God gave me to say. A lot of that, the petty jealousy and the nonsense that's going to go on is to condition you. Because you've got to love your enemies. You've got to be able to obey God regardless of the consequences and regardless of who don't like it and regardless of who doesn't like it and regardless of the outcomes. Can you obey God no matter what? And the answer for most of us, most of the time, especially early in our walk, is no. So apparently Joseph here told them more than one dream, because he tells them this, we're told about this one dream, but then it says they hated him yet the more for his dreams, plural, and for his words. So they didn't like his dreams, and apparently he had more to say about this. Now some people say, well, Joseph was a spoiled brat, he was his daddy's favorite, and that sounds more like a preacher that wasn't the favorite in the family and resented it, and so looks at it that way. I don't think that was the case. I don't think Joseph was necessarily being nasty to them. And then it says, and he dreamed yet another dream, and he told his brethren, and said, behold, I dreamed a dream more. And behold, the sun and the moon and the 11 stars made obeisance to me. And he told it to his father and to his brethren. And his father rebuked him, and said to him, what is this dream that you have dreamed? Shall I and your mother and your brethren come to bow down ourselves to you to the earth? And his brothers envied him, but his father observed the saying. So even his daddy, who he was his daddy's favorite, got a little bit upset with him. And guess what? That's going to happen too. It's not just going to be the petty people that may have a problem with you at some point. Even people you have favor with, even people who seem to like you, people who seem to love you. There may come a time where God is moving in your life in such a way that it bothers them. Especially if they were in a higher position than you, and they see that you're going to rise above them. I hate making that kind of comparison, but that's kind of how people see it. They'll resent it. And there may be authority figures that are going to have a problem with the calling of God on your life. Too bad, so sad. It's part of the walk. It's part of the preparation. Because another test of because preparation involves testing. Can you honor authority even when it's unfair to you? Can you still obey Romans 13 when the pastor don't like you? When your boss don't like you? When your daddy doesn't like you? Because remember, it doesn't say honor your father and your mother when they're perfect. It doesn't say honor your father and your mother if they really like you. It doesn't say that at all, does it? The command to honor them is regardless of their behavior. Now, the next verse it says, and his brethren went to feed their father's flock in Shechem. Apparently he had a flock over in Shechem too. Jacob apparently had some assets in different locations. And Israel said to Joseph, aren't your brethren feeding the flock in Shechem? Come, and I will send you to them. And he said to him, here am I. And he said to him, go, I pray you, and see whether it is well with your brethren, and well with the flocks, and bring me word again. So he sent him out of the vale of Hebron, and he came to Shechem. So he was sent to go check on them, and I would imagine that they'd resent that too, because it's almost like he's their supervisor. God may put you in a position where you will have to check on people, where you will have to make evaluations, and people are not going to like it. Guess what? So what? There's a process here. Now your process may vary, but the point is there's going to be a process, and there's different stages. So he goes from just being his father's favorite and what some people might call a snitch, to being someone, and this is where people miss this revelation. They look at him as just a snitch, but he goes, even if we assume he's a snitch at the beginning of the chapter, by this point in the chapter where he sends him to go check on his brethren, he's gone from what you want to call a snitch to someone that his father trusts to bring him a reliable account of how his brethren and how the flocks are doing. We may not know anything else, but we know for sure that Joseph can be trusted. He can be trusted to evaluate what's happening, come back and give his father an accurate account of what's going on. Joseph is trustworthy. Joseph has some maturity here. Regardless of what you want to say. You can try to say whatever you want about the first chapter, but here it can't be disputed. Jacob trusts him to give him an accurate report. So we already see some, assuming that he was just a brat at the beginning of the chapter, which I don't think was the case, we see for sure that he's trustworthy. We see for sure he can be responsible. We see for sure that he's learned enough and he knows enough to know the difference between whether the flocks are doing well or doing poorly. He can evaluate the condition of the livestock. He's not ruling over Egypt just yet. Do you see this pattern? God will develop you in stages. Don't resent the smaller tasks that God might give you right now. Because God will use that smaller task to develop, not just develop your character and give you some experience, but also to start training you to handle the greater responsibility. Now the next verse. So he comes to Shechem, right? And the next verse says, and a certain man found him, and behold, he was wandering in the field. And the man asked him, saying, what are you looking for? And he said, I seek my brother. Tell me, I pray you, where they feed their flocks. And the man said, they have left here, for I heard them say, let us go to Dothan. And Joseph went after his brethren, and they found him. He found them in Dothan. And when they saw him afar off, even before he came near to them, they conspired against him to kill him. And they said one to another, behold, this dreamer is coming. Come now, therefore, and let us slay him and cast him into some pit, and we will say some evil beast has devoured him, and we shall see what could become of his dreams. They're trying to kill him over a dream. Like I said, his brothers were not angels. Because my goodness, I can understand resenting somebody for a dream. I guess that can happen, but wanting to kill him over it? Oh my. And you do have some destiny assassins, but that's another story. And this is where I want to focus, this 15th verse. And a certain man found him, and behold, he was wandering in the field, and the man asked him, what are you looking for? We don't even know this man's name. We're never told who he was. We don't know what he looked like. We don't know where he was from. We don't know if he was a foreigner, if he was an Israelite, if he was a Perizzite, a Canaanite, a Hittite, a Hivite, or whateverite. We have no idea. And this nameless man, a significant portion of human history, rests on this one encounter with this one man. I want to also tell you tonight that part of your preparation is understanding that God does not move in coincidence. Keep your eyes open. Don't take people lightly. Because you never know who God's going to use to move you along in your destiny. This man found him. Found him wandering. Guess he got there and he's looking for his brother, and he just starts walking around because he can't find them. So even Joseph could apparently be trusted to report on his brethren. Apparently he wasn't staying focused on finding them. But this man found him and asked him, what are you looking for? And I want to ask you tonight, what are you looking for? We want to be prepared. You want to prepare. You don't even understand what you're looking for sometimes. You need to ask yourself the question, what am I really looking for? What am I after? What is motivating you? What do you commit time to? What do you study? What do you observe? Who do you associate with? Where do you go? What has your attention? What has your focus? What has your affection? Because the truth is, we seek what we really want. It's like the man who says he wants to be a power lifter, but doesn't touch any weights. Now today the weather was really bad, and I was going to go to the gym after getting some winter tires, but I saw the storm was getting worse. So I said, I'll just go straight home. But I worked out at home. You know why? Because I'm trying to get in shape, and I want to get in shape. And guess what? Even if I can't get to the gym, I'm going to work out at home. I'm going to exercise. And here's another thing you got to understand: preparation. Preparation always produces results. You know, it snowed a couple days ago, and I had to clear the driveway before going to work because the snow plow comes by and it blocks up the driveway. I went out and I got it done quick, and it was relatively easy. And I mentioned that to my wife. I said, you know why it was easy? Because I've been lifting weights and I'm stronger. How are you preparing? Well, tell me you want to be stronger and you're not doing anything about it. What are you seeking? It's like the man who says he wants to see revival, but he doesn't pray. I hate to be the one to tell you this, but revival is never preached in. It's prayed in. What are you looking for? Are you even pointed in the right direction? Saints of God, I want you to evaluate your life. What have you been seeking? What have you been committed to? What is it that you're really going after? And then compare it to what God has actually ordained for your life, if you know. And a lot of times we're going to see there's a bit of a difference. There's a bit of a divergence, and that means it's time for course correction. In this case, God sent this man that we don't even know who he was to make sure that Joseph fell into a trap. Ain't that something? Something you also got to understand is that part of the preparation is involuntary. God will orchestrate circumstances to put you in the position He wants you to be in. And in Joseph's case, it was to head straight toward a group of brothers that were planning to kill him. Now his older brother convinced him not to kill him, but they sold him into slavery instead. And most of us know the rest of the story. He goes down and they sell him to the captain of Pharaoh's guard, who puts him over his whole household because apparently Joseph is trustworthy. And he even says to him, the only difference between him and the only thing he didn't have access to was the man's wife. Everything else, he had free reign. Joseph could be trusted. And we see this in chapter 39. I'll read it. And Joseph was brought down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, captain of the guard, an Egyptian, bought him of the hands of the Ishmaelites which had brought him down there. And the Lord was with Joseph, and he was a prosperous man, and he was in the house of his master, the Egyptian. And his master saw that the Lord was with him, and that the Lord made all that he did to prosper in his hand. And Joseph found grace in his sight, and he served him, and he made him overseer over his house, and all that he had he put into his hand. And it came to pass from the time he had made him overseer in his house, and over all that he had, that the Lord blessed the Egyptian's house for Joseph's sake, and the blessing of the Lord was upon all that he had in the house and in the field. And he left all that he had in Joseph's hand, and he knew not aught what he had, except the bread which he did eat. And Joseph was a goodly person, well favored, and we kind of know the next part of the story. Potiphar's wife gets the hots for Joseph, but that's not what we're going to. We'll talk about that a little bit. But you look at this. Part of your preparation, like I said before, you may be put in situations that are seemingly unfavorable or unpleasant. Now, some of them certainly will be very unpleasant at times. And yet, if you submit to the process, God's favor will show. Now, it may not put you in a position of splendor, but God will grant you the favor that you need to do what you're supposed to do. And God will bless other people because of you. But then this also requires you to submit to the process. In Joseph's case, he had no choice. And the truth is, some of us, even in this modern age, let's face it, some of us, God has to kind of put us in a corner. He has to corner us to make us do right. That's just how it is with some of us. Who knows, maybe it was that way for Joseph, we don't know. But what we do know is he didn't really have a choice. But God will bless them for your sake. And a lot of us, we don't want to be in a subservient position, as what some of us will look at it that way. We'll call it subservient. And to be subservient is not necessarily bad. You know, a drill sergeant is subservient to the platoon commander. That's how it is. He serves under him. That's what it means to be subservient. But you're still serving the same cause. You just have different duties. You have a different position. Some of us don't want that. And I hate to be the one to tell you this, but at some point in your walk, you are going to be subservient to someone else. Almost nobody starts at the top. And God will have a process to prepare you, something that I want to encourage you with, especially if you're in a particular stage of your preparation where it is unpleasant or it's cumbersome, it's burdensome, it's troublesome, I want to encourage you that all it means is God is moving you forward. Be faithful. Be useful. Be a blessing. I know some people don't want to, they look at serving someone else as being subservient, or as if subservient is necessarily a bad thing. It isn't. The gunnery sergeant's a real tough dude, but he's subservient to the company commander. He's got to follow his orders. That's okay. It doesn't make him any less. Remember when I served in the United States Marine Corps, all the officers had great respect for the gunnery sergeants. And those of us who were officer candidates, we respected the gunnery sergeants and to some extent feared them. Oh man. They were no joke. They were not to be trifled with. God may very well prepare you by putting you under another ministry for a while. Maybe you'll be there forever, we don't know. Not necessarily in the same capacity. But God will use these things to train you, to prepare you, to groom you for further responsibility. Yeah, I remember before we launched this ministry, I was part of a church, and I was on the praise and worship team. I was basically the church janitor. If the deacons were doing anything, I was there helping them. I was basically the assistant deacon, if you want to call me that. And I even joined the dance ministry at one point because I wanted to put myself under more authority. Because I'd been studying spiritual authority, and I understood that if you submit to authority, you benefit from the anointing of that authority. Make yourself useful. Joseph was in a bad situation. He went from being the favorite son of a very rich man to being a slave in a foreign country. And my goodness, even to this day, a lot of people in a lot of countries do not treat foreigners very well. And throughout human history, has been a very long history of people not being very nice to slaves. But God was with him. And this is something you also have to understand about the more difficult parts of your preparation. The frustrating parts. Is that the Lord is with you. So make yourself useful. Be a blessing. Use whatever it is God has gifted you with to be a blessing. And God will bless others for your sake. And you will see the favor of God, maybe not in the way you want to. Because Joseph had favor, but he was still a slave. Just a fancy slave, but let's face it, a fancy slave is better than a non-fancy slave. I don't know about you, but if I had to choose between being the field slave or the slave running the whole operation, I'll pick option number 2. Joseph probably had better living accommodations than I do. At least at that point. Then Potiphar's wife goes after him and he rejects her, and then she lies, claims he raped her. And he gets thrown in prison. And some people estimate he was there for 13 years, some people say he was there for 17 years. We don't know. But we do know he was there for a while, and in the Psalms it says that they hurt his feet with fetters. A lot of us focus how at some point he's placed in charge of all the prisoners, and he was basically running the prison. But that didn't happen right away. They threw him in there and treated him just like every other prisoner. He was in shackles. He had fetters on his ankles. And as you keep wearing them, they start chafing you. They rub you raw. Your ankles and your feet might even get cuts on them and get infected. It's not a pleasant experience. And God was with him through all that. And we're going to talk more about preparation in the next lesson, but I want to focus on this. You know, we want to go to the palace without going to the prison. It's not like we want the cave without the crown without the cave. It's not going to happen. And my main purpose tonight is to encourage you that if you are enduring some difficulty right now, see this as your time as a slave in Egypt. Be a good slave. If this is your time in the prison in Egypt, be a good prisoner. Whatever it is you do, make it a good testimony for the kingdom. Keep your life clean. And what you're going to see is that God will use it to prepare you for your destiny, whatever it might be. As Joseph went from being what some people would call a snitch to someone who could be trusted to evaluate the condition of the flock and report on how well his brothers were doing or not doing, to being a slave and then to running somebody's entire household. Do you really think? And it says that Potiphar saw that the Lord was with him. Would that have happened if he was a bad slave? If he was disobedient, he wasn't doing what he was supposed to do? No. Because God can't bless the work of your hands if you're doing nothing. God can't put his favor on your work if you have no work. So for the love of God, folks, be useful in some way. And Joseph goes on to running Egypt, the most powerful world empire at that time. And even Pharaoh said to him, only in the throne will I be greater than you. Imagine the magnitude of that. And eventually his father and his brothers do bow to him. But it wasn't about lording it over them. It was rather about being placed in a position of authority to save them and to preserve their legacy so that Israel could become a nation. Understand that even your pain in your preparation has a purpose. Stop running from it. Stop hiding from it. Face it head on. Embrace it. Accept it. And commit it to God. And I promise you, it will work out for the good of your destiny.